My name is Emily Clark. I'm 34 years old, creative director at one of the most competitive media firms in Manhattan, or at least I was. I used to think success meant keeping your head down, letting your work speak for itself. I thought love meant compromise. I thought loyalty meant swallowing your doubts and trusting the people who swore they were on your side. I don't think that anymore. It started maybe it ended at the annual end-of-quarter promotion gala, the one I had helped plan for the third year in a row, the one where I rewrote Mara Whitman's entire speech at 3 a.m. the night before because, as always, she said she was too slammed to get to it. She always said that, too slammed, too swamped. Can you help me tighten this? You're so good with tone. Translation: do my job and make me look brilliant. And I always did. I smiled, stayed up late, skipped gym classes, canceled dates. I gave everything. Because I thought if I gave enough, someone would finally say, "This is the woman we can't do without." That night, I wore a navy wrap dress I'd bought months ago and never had the occasion to wear. I even curled my hair, something I hadn't bothered with since pre-pandemic. Adam said I looked beautiful when I came out of the bedroom. But something in his eyes wasn't there. It was like he said it from memory. Like he knew it was the right thing to say, but forgot how to feel it. The gala was held at the W Hotel near Times Square. Champagne towers, white uplighting, some soft jazz remixes in the background. I could smell the money in the air bonus season, executive level. Everyone was polished, smiling just a little too wide. Mara made her grand entrance 15 minutes late, as always, claiming traffic. She wore this deep burgundy gown that clung to her like power. People swarmed her. She was magnetic, I can't deny it. She had this ability to make people feel like they were the only ones in the room. Adam walked away to grab us drinks. At least, that's what he said. I saw them near the back staircase, her hand brushing his shoulder as she laughed, leaning in. His posture told me everything. The way he tilted slightly toward her, like gravity forgot where I was standing. I told myself not to overreact. Maybe they were just being friendly. We all worked together. I'd been stressed. Maybe I was imagining things. Then Mara took the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice smooth, confident, calculated. "Tonight is about excellence, about vision, about the people who don't just show up but lift this company higher." The words were mine. I sat there, frozen, as she delivered line after line that I had typed out the night before, sitting on our couch with a blanket over my legs and Adam snoring beside me. Not once did she glance my way. Not once did she say thank you to Emily Clark, who helped shape this message. Because credit was not a language she spoke fluently, unless it was for herself. The applause was thunderous, champagne glasses clinked. I clapped too, because what else do you do when your own voice has been stolen and dressed in someone else's triumph? Afterward, Mara passed by our table, smiled at me like we were best friends, and said, "Killer turnout, Em. Seriously, your planning skills are unmatched." Planning skills. Not creative direction, not thought leadership, just logistics, schedules, venues, flowers. The message was clear: your support staff, not vision. Adam leaned over, his hand on my knee. "You okay?" I smiled, nodded, took another sip of champagne. Then I went to the bathroom and locked myself in the farthest stall. My palms were shaking, my cheeks felt hot, and I couldn't tell if I wanted to scream or sob. I did neither. I just stared at the crack between the tiles on the floor, trying to remind myself that I was imagining things, that it wasn't what it looked like. Until I got home. Adam fell asleep on the couch while I was washing my face. I went to plug in my phone on the charger and noticed his work bag still open. His phone screen lit up, not his usual lock screen. This one had no wallpaper, just plain black. A second phone. I wish I could say I hesitated, that I respected his privacy, but I didn't. I opened it. There were no social media apps, no email, just text messages, dozens of them, from M. Your tie looked hot today. Dinner tomorrow? I booked your favorite. Still thinking about last night? I sat down on the floor. My breath turned shallow. It wasn't just that they were cheating, it was how easily I'd missed it, how thoroughly they'd convinced me that everything was normal. My hands were trembling, but I kept scrolling. The earliest message I found was from 18 months ago. That meant it started when I was helping Mara revise her rebrand deck, the one Adam said was so impressive after the pitch. I had helped her write that too. She hadn't told him, obviously. Why would she? It would have ruined the illusion. And I was the illusion's architect. I didn't confront him that night. I went to bed in silence, feigning exhaustion. He curled into me in his sleep. I lay there with my eyes wide open, watching the ceiling blur through tears. In the morning, I kissed him on the cheek and said, "Good luck with your client call." Then I went to work, brewed my own coffee in the office kitchen, and opened a fresh Google Doc. I titled it, Exit Plan. I didn't know what it meant yet. But I knew this. I had been building palaces for people who handed me dust, and something in me had just snapped back into place. I used to think gaslighting was something only weak women fell for, the kind of women who didn't know better, who lacked confidence, who needed validation. And yet there I was, smart, strategic, independent, with 2 degrees, 3 promotions, and more campaign wins than I could count. But I still fell for it. I fell hard. Not all at once, of course. It happened in inches, and it started with love bombs. Adam and I met at a networking event in Brooklyn. I remember the night perfectly. It was spring, just warm enough for an outdoor terrace, but cool enough to justify the leather jacket he wore over a white tee. Cliché, I know, but he wore it well. He walked straight up to me while I was sipping my drink alone, scrolling emails. No cheesy pickup lines, just, "You look like someone who has 1,000 things to do and still made time to show up. That's impressive." He saw me. Or at least, he made me feel seen. Within 2 weeks, he was bringing coffee to my apartment every morning. Within 2 months, he had a drawer in my closet. Within 6, we'd moved in together. He told me I was the most capable woman he'd ever met. That I had a mind like a scalpel. That he was lucky, so lucky. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? At work, things were steady. Mara had just been promoted to VP and she seemed supportive. We weren't friends exactly, but she'd smile at me in the elevator, compliment my blazer, and say things like, "I always feel better when you're in the room." Subtle flattery. Subtle control. Because when push came to shove, when it was time to give public credit or fight for a raise, I was invisible again. There was this one project, the Shift Forward rebrand for a major lifestyle brand. I led the entire creative angle mood boards, tagline, visual assets. Mara barely showed up to the internal calls. But when we got to client pitch day, she swooped in, reworded 2 phrases, and took the spotlight like she'd birthed the concept herself. Afterward, she turned to me and whispered, "Sorry I took over, I just knew the client liked my voice." I smiled, told her, of course, because what else was I supposed to do? I was taught to be a team player. That night, Adam rubbed my shoulders while I vented. "She's threatened by you," he said. "You're 10 times sharper than her. Let her take her moment. You're playing the long game." He always made it sound like I was winning, even while I was losing ground. Looking back, I can trace the erosion like tree rings, one subtle shift at a time. Like the time I wanted to apply for a lateral role in another department, and Adam said, "Are you sure you're not running from something rather than to something?" Or when I told him I was thinking of asking for a raise, and he laughed softly, "Don't rock the boat. You have so much goodwill right now, just let it build." He never told me no. He told me to wait. And I waited. And waited. Until the opportunities passed me by. I remember one night, especially, I was working late on an internal strategy deck Mara had dropped on me last minute. Adam came home at 9:30, holding Thai takeout and a bottle of wine. He set it down gently on the table and said, "Babe, you're burning out. Why are you even doing this? She's not paying you extra." "She said she needed it," I replied, still typing. "And you know how she gets if she's unprepared." He frowned and sat across from me. "No, Em, I know how you get. You take on everything because you think if you just prove yourself a little more, they'll finally reward you. But you already deserve better. You don't need to prove a thing." Then he pushed the laptop closed and pulled me into his arms. We sat there on the floor, cab feeling beside us, while he kissed my forehead and said he was proud of me. It felt like love. But it wasn't. That night, after we ate, I opened my laptop again once he fell asleep and finished the deck anyway. Because I knew Mara wouldn't have. And because I didn't know how to stop being the reliable one. At work, the microaggressions added up. Not from everyone but enough. In meetings, people repeated my ideas louder 5 minutes later and called them their own. When I challenged timelines, I was told I was being rigid. When I asked questions, I was told I needed to trust the process. When I presented confidently, I was called aggressive. When I deferred politely, I was called uncertain. It was like there was no win-win, just a balancing act over a minefield. One time, Mara told me my tone in the client email was a little sharp. She said, "You don't want to come off intimidating, especially to male stakeholders. It's not a great look." I rewrote the email. And then Adam read it and said, "Babe, this sounds like someone who's apologizing for breathing." But when I said that to Mara the next day repeating his words, she just laughed and said, "Maybe your boyfriend doesn't understand corporate politics." That line sticks with me now. Because he did understand them, intimately. Maybe too intimately. It took me so long to see the web they spun around me. Because it was warm, it was familiar. It was full of compliments, kisses, shared dinners, and carefully worded encouragements. But every compliment was a collar. Every encouragement, a leash. And I wore it like it matched my outfit. Now, when I look back, I think of all the nights I stayed late at the office while Adam grabbed drinks with his team. All the times Mara said, "You're the only one I trust with this." While she handed me work she didn't want to do. All the times I was called irreplaceable until they replaced me in the room, in the strategy, in the story. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't dramatic, I wasn't insecure. I was being slowly erased in real time, smiling through it, thinking it was love. I've started keeping a list in my journal. I titled it Moments I Ignored. It's over 3 pages long now. And every day, I remember a new one. I don't cry when I write them down anymore. I just underline the words that hurt the most. Like a forensic linguist, building the case I didn't know I needed. Because if I ever doubt myself again, I want the evidence there. I want to remember exactly how they made me feel invisible. So I never ever hand them that power again. I think it's human nature to hope that betrayal is temporary. A mistake. A single moment of weakness. You don't want to believe it's habit. You don't want to believe that the people you love have been rehearsing their lies so long they could recite them in their sleep. The morning after the gala, Adam left early. "Client breakfast," he mumbled, brushing a kiss onto my temple before disappearing out the door. He was in such a rush, he forgot the second phone, left it in the side pocket of his work bag again. I stared at it on the kitchen counter while the kettle boiled. It just sat there, silent, innocent-looking, as if it hadn't detonated my entire life the night before. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. Because I'd already seen enough. I just stood there, in my robe, staring out the window at 7 a.m., asking myself one question on repeat. How long have I been blind? Later that day, I opened my personal laptop and started digging. Old photos, calendar invites, text threads, Emails. Not to torture myself, at least. That's what I told myself. I was looking for patterns, and what I found made me sick. It started with a dinner Mara hosted at our apartment about 18 months ago. I had totally forgotten about it. She'd suggested we do a creative team dinner to build rapport. She brought a few bottles of wine, ordered Mediterranean, and insisted we just chill instead of talking shop. Adam cooked the appetizers. He and Mara bantered in the kitchen. I remember feeling proud, thinking, wow, they're getting along. This is good for both of us. I took a photo of them laughing near the stove. I found that photo again in my iCloud. When I zoomed in, I noticed something I hadn't back then. Her hand on his lower back. His eyes slightly downcast, not toward the food, but toward her hand. I hadn't seen it then. Or I had, but I explained it away. From there, I started scrolling through my calendar. Adam's out-of-town work trips. Mara's off-sites. Too many overlaps. Too many Fridays where they both had to stay late. And me? I was home, writing pitch decks, drafting email language, lighting candles to make the apartment cozy for when Adam got back. Turns out I was setting the stage. For them, the final punch came from an Uber receipt. Back in November of last year, I had the flu. I was home in bed, wrapped in blankets and sipping lukewarm ginger tea. Adam had been out at client drinks again. That night, I'd texted him around 10:30, asking if he was coming home soon. Just about to head out, can't wait to see you, he replied. But what I found that day while sifting through our shared Google Drive was a receipt from that night. He'd taken an Uber from a hotel in Soho, not from the bar where he said he was. The drop-off was our apartment. Timestamp, 10:28 p.m. He had already been home when he replied to me. Which means whoever he was with was in my space. With my scent on the sheets. With my tea still warm on the nightstand. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the proximity. The fact that they didn't even bother to hide it that well. Because they didn't think I'd ever look. Because they didn't think I'd ever question them. I sat in silence for a long time that night, replaying every moment in my head like courtroom evidence. That time I came home early and the living room smelled faintly like Mara's perfume, but Adam said he'd just come back from a meeting with her. That text she sent once that said, "Your boyfriend makes a mean risotto tau," which I had brushed off as a joke. That Christmas, when I bought Adam a leather bracelet and Mara said at the holiday party, "Nice bracelet, she has good taste," I had smiled, thought nothing of it. But she wasn't admiring my taste. She was claiming it, mocking it. I wish I could say I got angry then, that I screamed, "Threw something, let the fire rise!" But I didn't. What I felt was numb. Like my body had gone underwater and every sound was muffled. I sat on the kitchen floor with my laptop open, my arms wrapped around my knees, the only light coming from the screen and the refrigerator bulb I'd forgotten to close. I couldn't even cry. Because I was grieving something that had died so long ago, I hadn't noticed the smell. That night, I slept in the guest room. I told Adam I was on a tight deadline and needed to focus. He didn't question it. He never did when I said work. Because that was the one thing they all believed in. They knew I'd show up. No matter how tired. No matter how betrayed. The next morning, I opened a blank Google Doc. Again. But this time, I didn't title it Exit Plan. This time, I titled it The Inventory. A simple list of every lie, every red flag, every betrayal. A document with timestamps, screenshots, cross-references. Not for revenge. For clarity. Because I knew something now, gaslighting only works if you don't have receipts. And I was finally collecting mine. I stopped sharing things with Adam. I started password protecting my documents. I copied old work decks into my personal drive, especially the ones Mara had presented as her own. I didn't know what I was going to do yet. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to be quiet about this forever. There's a moment, after the betrayal but before the exit, when everything becomes unbearably clear. You start seeing it all at once. The pattern, the politics, the performances you used to think were just how work works. It's not a meltdown. It's not even rage. It's silence. A dangerous crystalline silence. Like the moment just before a glass shatters? That's where I was. I started noticing things. Or maybe I had always noticed them, but now I understood what they meant. The Slack messages that used to ping at all hours, they slowed. The meetings where I used to be looped in just in case, they vanished. Suddenly, there were entire pitch cycles I hadn't heard about until the deck was finalized. Mara would smile at me in the hallway, say, "Sorry, that one came together so fast we couldn't wait." But I used to be the one who made things come together fast. Now I wasn't even CC'd. It wasn't just me being left out. It was me being erased. The clearest example? The Monday Vision Sync. It was a closed-door brainstorm held every other week for the senior creative team where we mapped out big-picture strategy, branding pivots, and upcoming industry shifts. I had been a permanent fixture, not just invited, integral. Then one Monday, the invite didn't come. I thought it was a glitch. I messaged Sam, our head of copy, and asked if the sync had been rescheduled. "Oh," he typed, "thought you were looped in. Maybe it's just leadership this time." Leadership. That word echoed in my head like an accusation. At lunch that day, I walked past conference room 7B. Glass-walled. Frosted just enough to obscure expressions, but not outlines. I saw them all in there, Mara at the head. Adam 2 seats down. He was leaning forward, engaged, laughing at something she said. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. They were planning a future I wasn't in. I stood there for longer than I should have. Part of me wanted to storm in, pull out a chair, ask why no one thought to include me. But another part, maybe the smarter part, knew exactly what would happen if I did. They'd say I was being dramatic. They'd smile, offer a token apology, and gaslight me with plausible deniability. "Oh no, it wasn't personal. We figured you were busy. Next time, for sure." Then they'd watch me shrink. Again. No. I wasn't going to give them that moment. Instead, I walked to the kitchen, poured myself some coffee, and sat at my desk like everything was fine. But that day, I started printing things. Emails, memos, deck drafts with metadata, version histories. I started archiving every project I'd touched, every contribution I'd made, every time my work had been stripped of my name. Because someday, someone was going to ask for proof. And I was going to have it. Later that week, Mara pulled me into a quick one-on-one. She closed her office door with that overly casual shrug she always used when she was about to say something calculated. "So listen, I know things have been a little fast-paced lately. I just want to check and see how you're feeling. Are we good?" It wasn't a real question. It was a preemptive strike. She knew I'd noticed the shift. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "I'm fine, just focusing on delivering strong work." She smiled, tilted her head. "Love that, and just know we're trying to be more strategic about who's in what room. It's not about exclusion, it's about focus. You know how stretched bandwidth is these days." I nodded. I knew what she was really saying. You're not the chosen one anymore. After that, I stopped staying late. I stopped volunteering for things no one thanked me for. And when someone repeated my idea in a meeting, I didn't jump in to reclaim it. I just made a mental note of who did it and who stayed silent. The list grew fast. There's a specific kind of pain that comes from watching people you supported sit quietly while you're pushed out. It's worse than betrayal, because betrayal requires intent. Silence just requires comfort. And everyone in that office was comfortable with me being overlooked. That Friday, the company sent out a newsletter highlighting internal contributors to the new Live Bold campaign. Mara was front and center. A paragraph about her vision. A quote from Adam about cross-departmental synergy. And then, under creative contributors, my name wasn't listed. I had written the original tagline. I had designed the core pitch deck. The mood board still had my watermark on it. But according to the world, I didn't exist. I stared at the screen for 5 minutes straight. Then I closed my laptop, stood up, and walked outside. It was cold that day. Sharp New York cold, the kind that makes your eyes water. I walked 10 blocks without thinking, past a flower stand, past 2 cafes, into a quiet park where no one knew my name. I sat on a bench, pulled my scarf tighter, and whispered aloud, "They're not going to give it back to me. The credit, the position, the voice I'd lost, they were never going to hand it back. If I wanted it, I'd have to take it. Not by force, not by screaming, by building something so undeniable that they'd be forced to watch." That night, I opened my laptop and typed 5 words. "Let's talk. Confidential. Emily." I sent it to someone I hadn't spoken to in almost 2 years. One of the only women I knew who had walked away from this company before it broke. I didn't know what the future held. But I knew this. I was done waiting for permission to be powerful. There's a point where the gaslighting stops being subtle, where the sabotage stops hiding behind smiles and becomes structural, where your absence from a room is no longer an accident. It's the goal. That point came for me on a Wednesday morning. It was raining hard, New York's kind of rain, the kind that slices sideways even when you're under an awning. I was soaked halfway to the knees by the time I got to the office. When I walked in, the front desk girl gave me a funny look. "Oh, you're not remote today?" "No," I said. "Why would I be?" She didn't answer. Just looked back at her screen like she'd said too much. Something felt off. The energy was shifted. I got to my desk and opened my email. There was a calendar update from HR. Team reallocation individual conversations. Location, room 2. Time, 11:00 a.m. I blinked at the subject line. Team reallocation? No one had mentioned anything about a restructure. 10 minutes later, I saw Mara walk past with a coffee in hand. She didn't look in my direction. That wasn't unusual anymore, but still something twisted in my gut. I walked by the break room to clear my head, and that's when I heard it. 2 junior designers whispering. I thought Emily was leading that campaign. Mara said she's on a reduced visibility track for now. Wait, like probation? No clue. HR's handling it. I didn't stop walking, but my hands were ice. At 11:00 a.m. sharp, I sat across from Clara from HR. She smiled like she was about to offer me a spa voucher. "Hi, Emily. Thanks for coming in. This is just a quick check-in about how we're aligning talent across initiatives." Her voice was chirpy, practiced. "Given bandwidth changes, we're adjusting team allocations. You'll now be supporting internal documentation and QA across projects while we assess optimal positioning." Translation: You're being moved to the corner, quietly, so no one asks questions. I asked, "Does this come with a title change?" She shook her head. "No, not at this point." "Is there a reason I wasn't consulted?" "We're streamlining. It's not about performance, it's about fit." That word again. Fit. I'd heard it before. Every time a woman with a voice got told to be softer. Every time a team needed to reset the energy. I asked if Mara approved the change. Clara blinked. "This is leadership, directed." Of course it was. That night, Adam wasn't home. He was in LA, meeting with a tech startup client. He hadn't even told me he booked the flight, Just texted the itinerary on the day of. I made tea, sat on the couch, opened Instagram. And there it was. A photo tagged at a vineyard in Napa. Mara, wine glass in hand, hair back, sunglasses on, and behind her, slightly out of focus Adam. Same posture, same watch, same man. I clicked the account. It was one of the junior analysts. Probably didn't realize he was posting a landmine. The caption said, "Best off-site crew ever, happy team vibes." My hands shook so hard, I nearly dropped my mug. He had lied again. She had lied again. They were still doing this. Still parading their affair while slicing away my sanity in neat, polite office memos. And the worst part? No one was stopping them. I didn't cry that night. I didn't scream. I just sat there. For hours. Still. Silent. Scanning every moment of the past month, and the month before that, and the month before that. I had let them get close. Close enough to rewrite the narrative. Close enough to make me question my own worth. But that was over. The next morning, I walked into the office early. Earlier than usual. No one was in yet, not even the interns. I sat at my desk, opened a private browser, and searched how to register an LLC in New York. It took less than an hour. A name came to me instantly, Proofco. No one would know what it meant. But I would. Later that day, Mara called an all-hands creative sync. I was barely acknowledged. She threw around phrases like new creative ownership and clarity in leadership lanes. Everyone nodded. No one looked at me. Except Sam. After the meeting, he stopped by my desk. "This is bullshit," he whispered. I didn't say anything, just looked him in the eye and smiled tight but calm. "Thanks," I said. "I've got it." And I did. That night, I started pulling documents. My work. My decks. My drafts. Every campaign I had touched. Every tagline, every concept. I labeled them all, date-stamped them, stored them in encrypted folders. Because I wasn't going to burn it down. I was going to build something better. Quietly, strategically. And when the time came, they would see exactly who they underestimated. I used to think the breaking point would come with screaming. That when it all fell apart, I'd throw things. Scream into pillows, shatter glasses, demand answers. But that's not how it happens. When you've been slowly erased professionally, emotionally, systemically, there's no sound left to make. You don't explode. You evaporate. And one day, you realize you're just gone from yourself. That was me. I wasn't crying, but I wasn't sleeping either. I'd lie awake in the dark, our bedroom ceiling a pale blur above me. Adam's soft, even breath beside me steady, oblivious, or pretending to be. Sometimes I'd roll over and just stare at him. Try to remember the last time he'd touched me without guilt. The last time his kiss didn't feel like a cover story. There were nights I considered shaking him awake, confronting him, demanding the truth. But then what? He'd lie, or worse, he'd confess, and I'd have to do something. And I wasn't ready yet. Not because I was afraid of being alone. I was afraid of acting too soon. I needed to be ready, prepared, protected. So instead, I built my plan in the dark. By day, I was quiet, professional, unbothered. I showed up on time, smiled in meetings, took notes. Mara could strip my titles, HR could reshuffle my role. But they couldn't erase what I knew. What I was building? My journal became my Bible. Each night I wrote what I saw, what I suspected, what I remembered. I wasn't just processing, I was documenting. One night, I wrote the words, She used my voice in her pitch. The headline copy I drafted is still in her final deck. She changed 2 adjectives and claimed the concept. I searched through the old shared drive, then I found it. My draft. Time-stamped. Shared with her 2 weeks before the final deck. My phrasing. My formatting. My idea. She had presented it at a digital branding conference last month under her own name. She got interviewed by Adweek because of it. I printed that email chain and added it to a folder I'd started calling Truth. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but I knew that truth is power. Even quiet truth. Especially quiet truth. Therapy helped too. I'd finally messaged my old therapist and rebooked an appointment. We sat across from each other in that tiny office with the bad couch and the fern that was always dying. She looked at me and said, "You're speaking so clearly, Emily, but I can feel the freeze. When's the last time you let yourself feel anything?" I shrugged. If I let it in, I might drown. She nodded, gently, then asked, "So what do you do instead?" I told her the truth. I build. Because building gives me structure. And structure keeps me upright. I stopped answering Adam's texts quickly. Stopped making dinner for 2. Stopped asking how his day went. He didn't notice. Or maybe he did and didn't care enough to say anything. One night, he came home late. I was in the living room with my laptop. "Working again?" he asked, loosening his tie. I nodded. "Yeah, almost done." "You okay?" I turned and smiled just enough to not invite more. Just tired. And that was the truth. Tired of lying. Tired of waiting. Tired of pretending to be the version of myself that fit in their story. That weekend, I did something small but huge. I removed Adam from my emergency contact form at work. Replaced him with my sister. It was symbolic, but also real, because I realized something. If I got hit by a car tomorrow, he wouldn't be the first person I'd want by my side. And if that's true, then why was he still in my bed? I also reached out to 2 women who'd left the company the year before. One was Natalie, a former UX strategist who left for culture reasons. The other was Priya, a brilliant insights analyst who once told me, "There are rooms we'll never get into unless we bring our own key." They both responded quickly. We met at a coffee shop in Soho on a Sunday. I told them everything. Not in a tearful breakdown, but in crisp, organized beats like a client pitch. Mara's credit theft. The exclusion. The HR shuffle. Adam. Their faces didn't twist in surprise. They nodded slowly, as if hearing a story they'd known by heart. "You're not the first," Priya said softly. "But maybe," Natalie added, "you'll be the last one who lets them get away with it." That's when I made the ask. I told them about about what I wanted to build. About starting clean with values, with integrity, with actual creative freedom. And, to my surprise, they said yes. That night I walked home in the cold, wind scraping my cheeks. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something rise inside me. Not revenge. Not even anger. Just certainty. I wasn't going back. Not to him. Not to that job. Not to the person I was when I thought loyalty meant silence. I was still sleeping alone in the guest room. Adam still hadn't asked why. Maybe he was relieved. Maybe he was guilty. Maybe he was just counting the days until I broke and forgave him again. But I wasn't breaking. I was molting. And by the time he noticed, there'd be nothing left of the woman he thought he owned. It's strange how easy it is to disappear without anyone noticing. You stop replying right away. You let your calendar fill with vague external meetings. You smile in meetings but say nothing new. You nod at compliments but don't absorb them. You play along. And while they think you're still on the leash, You're cutting the thread. By now, I had 2 lives. Life 1 was still Emily Clark, creative director, technically attending meetings, streamlining processes, and writing content that someone else would probably take credit for. Life 2 was Emily Clark, founder of Proof Co. I had my LLC. I had a domain. I had a Notion board so organized it looked like a VC pitch deck. And I had a small team, Natalie, Priya, and me. 3 women. 3 battle scars. 1 mission. We didn't want to play office politics anymore. We wanted to build something that didn't require survival tactics. Mornings became sacred. I'd get up at 6:30 before Adam, brew coffee in silence, and sit by the window to work on our prototype project, a hybrid brand strategy audit service with full creative execution. Something small agencies didn't do, something large agencies never did well. I wrote our value pillars, drafted our first client pitch, sketched the brand identity, all while Adam slept 10 feet away. He didn't ask, didn't notice the new folders on my desktop, didn't care that I didn't join him for wine anymore. He was barely home, which worked in my favor. At work, I stopped over-functioning. I no longer stayed late to fix other people's decks. Didn't jump in when Mara floundered during a client question. Didn't offer notes unless directly asked. Some people noticed. Sam did. One afternoon, he messaged me. "You good?" I replied with a smile emoji and just reprioritizing my energy. He sent back, "About time." I started making copies of things. Not illegally. Just safely. Like the original branding proposal I wrote that ended up in Mara's keynote. Like the Slack thread where I offered the campaign name that later became a client's trademark tagline without my name attached. I exported every single one. Time-stamped. Labeled. Stored on an encrypted drive. Because someday soon, if anyone asked what I really did in that company, I'd have a folder that answered louder than words. I also started listening more carefully. Not to gossip. To tone. The way Mara talked to younger women in meetings, always sweet, always cutting. Love your ambition, but let's simplify that idea. Great passion, just not super strategic yet. The way Adam's name came up just a little too often in executive side conversations. He's definitely leadership material. Visionary guy, real command. They were grooming him for something, which meant they were pushing me out for real. And I no longer needed to stop them. Let them underestimate me. Let them think I was shrinking. I wasn't shrinking. I was shifting. Adam came home late one Thursday. 10:47 p.m. I was in bed pretending to sleep. He sat on the edge and sighed. "You've been distant." I didn't answer. "If this is about work about Murray, need you to trust me." Still, silence. He placed a hand gently on my back. Familiar, practiced. "You know you can talk to me." That's when I almost laughed. Out loud. Because this man had built an entire second relationship behind my back, in my own apartment. And he still thought he was the safe one. I didn't move. After a long pause, he sighed and got up. "Okay, good night." He left the room, and I opened my eyes. I changed the passwords on my laptop the next day. Removed all shared drives from our home Wi-Fi. Stopped backing anything to the cloud accounts he once had access to. Not because I thought he'd go digging. Because I knew he'd panic when he realized I wasn't sharing anymore. Men like Adam need access. Access makes them feel necessary. Access makes them feel secure. Without access, they flail. And he'd start flailing soon. The last step that week? I booked a consultation with a corporate IP attorney. Not to sue. To protect. I showed her the proof I had mails, decks, version histories. I asked about the framework I'd developed. the system we were going to market under Proof Co. She reviewed it all, then looked at me with raised eyebrows. Emily, this is strong. File for protection. If they try to steal this, they'll lose. I filed the paperwork that same day. A week later, I saw a meeting invite pop up on my calendar. Team Realignment Strategy, Exec Sync. Attendees Mara, Adam, HR, Sam, and me. It had no agenda. No context. Just a 10:00 a.m. slot in the glass conference room on 21. I stared at it for a moment, then smiled. Because I knew what was coming. And more importantly, they didn't know what was coming from me. I didn't sleep the night before the meeting. Not out of anxiety, out of clarity. I was awake because everything was ready. Every document filed. Every loose end tied. Every last vestige of who I used to be archived. This wasn't a confrontation. It was a handover. At 9:00 a.m., I packed up my office drawer. Not dramatically. Not in a rush. Just a quiet transfer. 1 mug, 2 pens, my notebook, a single photo of my sister and me at Lake George. I left the framed photo of Adam and me in the trash bin. It belonged there. At 9:55, I walked into the conference room. The air was heavy with pretense. Mara was already seated, legs crossed, black heels tapping softly. Adam looked at his phone, avoiding my eyes. HR rep Clara smiled like she always did when someone was about to get steamrolled politely. Thanks for coming, Emily, Mara began, voice smooth like butter over a knife. We just wanted to align on your evolving role here. Evolving. A word that meant, we've decided who you are now. I nodded. Didn't interrupt. Didn't blink. Adam finally spoke. We think there's an opportunity for you to explore mentorship, guiding newer creatives, internal storytelling-less client-facing pressure. He said it like a gift. I almost smiled. Because I already had a resignation letter in my bag. And an email scheduled to go out in 20 minutes. They kept talking. Words like realignment, support role, culture shift. I watched their mouths move but didn't hear a thing. Because I wasn't there anymore. Not mentally. Not emotionally. Not contractually. When they were done, I leaned forward, calm and direct. Thanks for your feedback. I won't be taking the mentorship role. Silence. I continued. Effective immediately, I'm resigning from the company. Clara blinked. Mara leaned back. Adam opened his mouth, then closed it again. I placed a sealed envelope on the table. My official resignation letter, signed, and a summary of transition notes for current projects. Then I pulled a USB drive from my bag and slid it toward Clara. That contains documentation of all original work I've contributed to over the past 2 years, tagged, time-stamped, and cross-referenced with company archives. I've also filed for intellectual property protection for strategic materials I developed independently. Some of those frameworks were included in decks presented without my name attached. I looked straight at Mara. I've CC'd legal. And to Adam. I've removed you from all shared cloud access. Please delete any personal files of mine you may have. That was the first moment his face cracked. I stood up. This is not personal, this is professional. And I walked out. I didn't cry in the elevator. I didn't even breathe. I stood tall, like someone stepping out of a burning building. Not running, not crawling. Just walking. One silent, steady step at a time. At 10:20 a.m., my LinkedIn post went live. Today, I say goodbye to a chapter I once believed was my story's climax, but some rooms are not meant to be stayed in, especially when the ceilings are glass and the exits are locked from the inside. I'm proud to announce the launch of Proof Co., a values-first branding collective committed to transparency, truth, and women-led creative power. For anyone who's ever been sidelined, silenced, or stripped of credit, you're not alone, and you're not done. Quiet power. founder announcement, women's leadership. By noon, it had 17,000 views. By 3:00 p.m., it hit 50,000. By the end of the day, my inbox was full of messages like, "Following you wherever you go. You were always the brains. Can I work for you now?" I knew something was off. "Thank you for saying what we couldn't." Adam texted that night. "Can we talk?" I didn't respond. He called. I let it ring. He sent a voice note. I deleted it. In the days that followed, I watched the dominoes fall. The USB had done its work. Legal requested a formal inquiry into IP practices. Mara went on leave. Adam unfollowed me on everything. The HR rep, Clara, sent a terse message. "We acknowledge receipt of your materials. Thank you for your professionalism." That was all I needed. Meanwhile, Proofco landed its first client, a women-run wellness startup that had followed my post. They said, "We want a brand built by someone who knows how to claim space." I smiled and told them, "That's exactly what we do." I moved out of the apartment a week later. Left a note on the counter. "You erased me once. I rebuilt myself louder." No forwarding address. No dramatic goodbye. Just the echo of everything he didn't say while I was still his. I used to think silence was weakness. Now I know silence is a blade. And I learned to sharpen mine. 2 days after my resignation, I woke up to an inbox on fire. Subject: "Loved your post, let's talk." Subject: "Are you accepting new clients?" Subject: "What you wrote felt like you were speaking directly to me." And then this one, from a VP at a competitor agency. "I showed your post in our morning stand-up. You should know half the room clapped." I hadn't slept much the night before, not from stress. From electricity? The kind that runs through your veins when you've finally stopped shrinking and started expanding into your real size. I got up early, brewed strong coffee, sat at the window and watched the sun rise over a city that no longer scared me. Not because it was softer, but because I was no longer scared of being cut out. I was building the door they wouldn't open for me. Later that morning, I opened LinkedIn again. My post had hit 110,000 views, hundreds of comments, thousands of reactions. But one stood out. From Sam. "You were always the real power behind the curtain. Glad the world gets to see it now. You built the engine while others took the podium. Never again." That made me cry. Not loud, not messy, just one slow, stunned tear. Because Sam knew, and he never said anything until now. And I realized, sometimes the people in the room can't fight for you until you leave it. By midday, the fallout had begun. A former intern of mine posted a thread. "Let me tell you about working under Emily Clark. She taught me how to present with conviction, defend ideas without apology, and never accept silence as consensus. When she left, the energy shifted. Her name was erased, but her fingerprints were everywhere." It went viral. Then came the screenshots. Anonymous Glassdoor reviews. Private DMs from women who'd once been too afraid to speak. The stories poured in. And slowly, publicly, the narrative shifted. A podcast picked up my LinkedIn post. They didn't name the company, neither did I, but they quoted the entire post word for word and followed with, "Why do so many talented women have to leave to be heard? Why does success for a woman still mean leaving to survive? Let's talk about it." And just like that, I wasn't alone anymore. On Friday afternoon, I got a text from Natalie. Check their site. I opened the company homepage. Mara's bio had been removed. Adam's title was changed from Director of Strategic Growth to just Senior Advisor. An internal email leaked on Twitter. We are conducting a leadership review to ensure alignment with our values. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled. They thought I'd go quietly. But quiet doesn't mean weak. It means controlled. And I had never felt more in control in my life. That weekend, I went to a bookstore in Brooklyn, wandered the aisles aimlessly, letting my mind rest for the first time in weeks. Near the back, in the business section, I saw a stack of books on women in leadership. On top sat a post-it someone had stuck there, handwritten, "Just because they don't clap doesn't mean you're not brilliant. Build anyway." I didn't know who left it, but I bought the book and left my own post-it. They erased me. I built louder. You can too. Adam texted again. This time, it was a longer message. "I know I messed up. I let things get too far, but we were a team, Em. I believed in you. I hope you believe that much." I stared at the screen. I did believe that once, but not anymore. Because if you love someone, you don't watch them burn and call it leadership. You don't kiss someone else and call it loneliness. You don't silence someone you claim to admire. I didn't respond. But I did block his number. For good. On Monday, I launched Proof Company's website. It wasn't flashy, but it was real. Our mission was clear. We build honest brands. We don't just tell stories. We undo the ones that weren't true to begin with. We had 3 clients by the end of the first week. All women-founded. All tired of begging to be heard. That night, I got one final email from a junior copywriter at my old firm. I'd never worked with her closely, but she wrote, "I just wanted you to know, I was going to quit. I felt like nothing I did mattered. But watching you walk out with dignity, with proof, and with power, that gave me courage. I stayed. But now I speak up." I sat in my tiny new office bare walls, folding chair, one plant, and smiled. Because that was the real win. Not that I left. Not even that I succeeded. But that I made silence impossible for the next woman after me. 6 months later, I woke up in a new apartment with soft morning light painting the walls. There were no corporate pings on my phone. No Adam in the kitchen. No voice in my head rehearsing explanations for things I didn't do wrong. Just quiet. And the soft rustle of leaves outside the window. And peace. God peace. Proof Co. had grown beyond anything I imagined. We had 6 clients. A tiny team of 5 full-timers and 3 freelancers. And every Friday we did something I never saw in my old job. We told each other the truth. Not in performance reviews, not in forced feedback loops. Just as women, as workers, as people. We said things like, "You carried us this week. I saw what you did. Thank you. Take tomorrow off, we've got this." That was the power I wanted to build. Not a throne. A table with open seats. The company I left, still standing, but wobbling. Mara never returned from leave. Adam jumped ship 3 months later, citing creative differences. People started asking questions. Not because I filed lawsuits, not because I dragged them through mud, but because when a voice rises that's been silent for too long, the world leans in. I didn't burn the bridge, but I made sure no one mistook it for a one-way street again. I saw Adam once, by accident. A conference networking mixer in Midtown, he spotted me from across the room. He didn't come over, just looked. And I met his gaze, gave the smallest smile, and turned away. Not out of spite, because there was nothing left to say. Some nights, I still think about the version of me that stayed too long. The woman who double-checked her tone in every email. Who rewrote speeches for people who never said thank you. Who made dinner for a man who was in someone else's arms. I think of her, and I thank her. Because she survived. She didn't scream. She didn't burn it all down. She just chose herself, one quiet choice at a time. And she walked. And she built. And she became me. Now, when I speak on panels or mentor young creatives, I say the same thing. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it walks out in heels and never looks back. I keep one thing on my new desk: a photo of that lake trip with my sister. We're both laughing, arms wide open to the wind. It reminds me what freedom looks like. Not success. Freedom. To say no. To say enough. To say, this isn't who I am anymore. To any woman listening to this right now, whether you're in a meeting where your voice is being talked over or in a relationship that feels more like erasure than love, let me say this. You are not dramatic. You are not too much. You are not hard to work with. You are clear. And clarity is terrifying to those who profit from confusion. But clarity will save you, just like it saved me. So, no, I didn't burn bridges. I lit my own path. And I promise, you can too.